Okay, good morning. So today is Mem Aleph Amud Beis. We have a bit of work to do to get there because we are starting out on Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, about 5 lines down by the 2 dots. But it's not long. I got to take a more, so I'll be able to do it in no time at all. Said the Mishnah to us. The Mishnah said that if you had in front of you Min and Harbe, and there was a machlokes. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Yesh b'nei min shiva, if one of the things that were in front of you was from the shiva saminim, then you had to make a bracha on that first. And the Chacham disagreed. They said you can make a bracha on whatever you wanted. This is where we are starting now on Mem Aleph by the 2 dots. You had in front of you many different foods that you could be picking. Amar Ula, machlekes b'sher b'chaysei and shaves. Where's the machlekes between the Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda? Says Ula, that is where the brachos of the foods that are in front of you are equal. What does equal mean? That we have to see. But what we're saying, presumably now, is that the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim is where the brachos are the same. As Rashi says, Kegoin zeisim v'tapuchim. Like, for example, you have olives and apples. The tarvayu ber pioetz, both the apples and the zeisim get ha'etz. Ubalifter estem bebracha achas. And if somebody would want to come along and be pater one with the other, so he has a choice. Now, I'm not sure that Rashi had to put in these last words, Balifter estem bebracha achas, that he's coming to pater up one with the other one. We could have just said Berchesen Shabbos, where the brachas are the same. You have Zaytim and Tapuchim, and that's where you have the Machlekes. Why does Rashi feel the need to come in and say that it's not just the brachas are the same, but you're coming to pater one with the other? Let's put that on the side and just remember that Rashi went to say that. Okay, so again, the Gemara says that Ula is explaining to us that the Machlekes between the Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim is the machlokes when the Berchosei are Shaves. Shaves, we're saying, means that they are the same. They're not merely equal in terms of their power or their import, but they are the same. Same bracha. Bar creates both for Zayas, for example, and for a Tapuach. The Rabbi Yehuda Savar min Shiva Adif, Rabbanan Safri min Chavav Adif. According to Rabbi Yehuda, what comes first? From the Shiva Saminim, it says Zaysim in the Torah, so therefore that gets first. Tapuchim, even though people think that it's first thing in the Torah, Adam Sin. We already had yesterday a Mem, Amud Aleph, that it's not one of the options. So Tapuach is not there at all. So I'm saying that all is a joke. The according to the Chachamim, whatever you prefer. You want to have olives, so make a bracha on the zaysim first. You want to have apples, so make a bracha on the tapuach first. It's up to you, because the chavivos trumps over the fact that one of them is one of the Shivas Haminim. Rashi says, Eza Shiyirtze. The Masnisin, the language of the Mishnah was, the Chacham say, Mevarchal Eza Men Shiyirtze, whatever you want. Says Rashi, what did it mean, Eza Shiyirtze, in the Mishnah? It meant that Sachaviv Alav Mashma, what you prefer, what you enjoy, what you're in the mood of. That's what you have the ability to make a bracha on first. Avo, but Ula says, She'ein berchosei and shavos, but if the brachos are not what? The brachos are not the same. Look at Rashi. Ein bracha achas poitrason. And one bracha is not going to work here. So the situation, whether you don't have ability to pata one with the bracha from the other, then the then everybody agrees that you make a bracha on one and then make a bracha on the other. On which? On whichever. So again, according to the way Ula is learning, where the brachas are not the same. In other words, you're not talking about a bracha of hadama, of two ha'etzes or two hadamas. You're talking about a where you're hoping that maybe you could pat the one with the other one. No, you're talking about a situation where you have what? Two different brachas. Let's say a bracha of ha'etz and a bracha of hadama. Why am I specifically being clear about that and not saying a bracha of ha'etz and shahako? Because if you remember, we already had a Gemara before on Lamites. We had a story about Bar Kapar. Remember the story about Bar Kapar? The story was where these two students were eating by Bar Kapar, and they had in front of them Kruv, Damascus, and Pargiot. And he got angry at both boys, and one of them because he jumped to eat the Pargiot first, and the other one laughed at him. So the one who he laughed at, he got angry for laughing, and the one who jumped for the Pargiot, he said, "Okay, in Chachma ein kan, Zikma ein kan." Like you should have asked me. You shouldn't be jumping and making brachas when you don't know what the laws of Kedimus are. So the simple understanding of that Gemara was what? That the Pargiot, even if it's chicken, it's a shakal, and the bracha on the shlaka is the bracha on the kruv and the dermaskin. Again, dermaskin was a eitz adam, a whole debate. But clearly the kruv, as we already explained before, those are only eaten, they're not eaten chai, then there will be a shahaka, they're only eaten when they're cooked. So that get a hadama. That hadama is going to be kedimus before shahaka. Why is it kedimus before shahaka? Because it's more specific. It's more specified. Things that are more specified come first. So in that case, it was clear that a shahaka goes second. So clearly over here, when we're saying B'sha'in b'chaysein shavis divrei hakol mevarach al zeh v'chayzim mevarach al zeh, it sounds like what we are saying is that there is the freedom to choose whichever one you want, and what we're probably talking about is a hadam and ha'etz, not shahakol and hadam or shahakol and ha'etz. Why? Because on that one, it's clear that the shahakol would go second. What I just said now is a little bit of Taisus over here. Look at the Taisus Avo. If you skip about halfway down in the Taisus go where it says Daf Lamed Tet Skabe Uvdu the Barka part, the Berchas Ber Priadam Chashiva Tzei Meshahako. Why is any other bracha more kedimus than shahako? Lefisha mivureres tefei, because it's more specified. There's more specified information, and that's a biology term. There's more specified information in the other brachas than shahaka. Shahaka can be used for anything. That's what we've already said. That shahaka was able to be used to any bracha, right? Why is that? The al-kulam, the mission told us on mem amanala. The al-kulam, right? Imam shahaka on the abedvari yatsa, because it's not specified. It's able to cover anything. So we saw in that Gemara Lama test that it's for sure shahaka is secondary. So over here, in Cain says Tais is gam bar pri'etz chashivit femi berachas bar pri'adama. Bar pri'adama is less specified than ha'etz. Ha'etz is more clear. You're going specifically about the tree. Yesh loymar delay chashiv bar pri'etz kol kachim bar pri'adama. K'moshe chashiv bar pri'adama shahako. Tais says I don't think so. I think that bar pri'etz and adam are pretty much the same, and it's not really one that's so much more specified information than the other one. Mashakasa behilchas gedelos, but the Bahag writes that bar pri'etz is taktin l'bar pri'adama, the mivureres tefei. The Bahag writes specifically that the bar pri'adama is secondary to bar pri'etz because bar pri'etz is mivureres tefei, has more specified information. Says Taisus, the key words are hainu l'fiyah maskana l'kamu. That's only according to the maskana later on. The pligi b'shem b'chaysein shavus the kamal Rabbi Yehuda. Avalahai lishna, but at this stage of the Gemara, that meaning the lay pligi b'shem b'chaysein shavus loim betukim sak dalachos gedos k'di brashnu le'el. This doesn't work at this stage. The Bahag's idea that the bar pri'etz is going to come before bar pri'adama because there's more specified information. It doesn't work at this stage of the Gemara. At this stage of the Gemara, we don't know that. At this stage of the Gemara, it would be improbable to bring in the Bahag, because then you wouldn't be able to say because there would be a kedimus. There would be a kedimus of a bar preitz over a bar pradama. The Tais is not disagreeing with the Bahag's conclusion. He just says that at this stage of the Gemara, you can't utilize the Bahag's conclusion. At this stage of the Gemara, it doesn't work. Good? So continues the Gemara. So at this stage of the Gemara, what did Ula tell us? That we have machlekes in the Mishnah between the rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda. That machlekes relates to Kedimus. Where is the machlekes? Says Ula, that machlekes is only in a situation where Berchaysein Shavais. And what we're saying is that Yehuda says that if you have one that's a min shiva, the min shiva is adif. What happens if he didn't? What happens if you had tapuchim and you had peaches? Tapuchim and tapuzim. Right? What would be the halacha then? Huh? Whichever you want. Right? The halacha would be whichever you want. It's only a situation where you have min shiva. Similarly, what happens if you have machlokes? The brachos are not shavos. You have a tapuach and you have oiriz, right? In that situation, what's the halacha? Again, there's no min shiva. Who doesn't care? And what's the halacha? Whatever you want. Is a min shiva. We say we're not going with the bahag. What happens if you're dealing with a situation where you have not a you have a banana, and you have a chita. And we're talking about the type of chita that you're eating it as a hadama, right? So you're having scorched wheat kernels, right? You're having kloyas. What would be the halacha then? So then you would come back to a situation where according to Rabbi Yehudi, you have a min shiva, so that chita should come first, right? Whereas according to Chachamim, that's where you would have the machlekes. So the machlekes is a situation where you have a min shiva, whether the min shiva is a bar per eight, right? When Ula said machlekes b'shir b'chaysein shavais, Rabbi Yehuda saver min shiva adif, Rabbanan saver min chaviv adif. The way Ula says it is only in a situation b'shir b'chaysein shavais. So you have either a hadama from a min shiva and a hadama without a min shiva, or a ha'etz from a min shiva versus a ha'etz from not a min shiva. In that situation, that's what we're saying. They have a machlekes between min shiva adif or chavivus adif. But what happens if you had a min shiva hadama or min shiva ha'etz versus another one that's a hadama? In other words, you're eating the chita, you're eating the klayos, which is a hadama and min shiva, or you're eating a zayas, which is a ha'etz min shiva, but you also want to eat the iris, right? The zayas of the iris. In that case, you have a min shiva, but the berchasein are not shavais. So what trumps? What trumps is berchasein einan shavais and divrei hakol, that you could pick either one. Even Rabbi Huda doesn't agree over there. Even Rabbi Huda agrees. I'm sorry, the min shiva is not adif. Good. At this stage of the Gemara, that's what we're understanding. Is that clear? Okay. Continues the Gemara. So I ask a question for the Gemara. Meisvei, how you live fun? I'm tonight in Vizayas. Verchal, it's not a part of Zayas. But the Gemara asks, we have a brisa that says that if somebody had in front of them, it's nine and a zayas, right? It's nine is a radish. People ate radishes, and they're very spicy. And somebody was eating a zayas as well. So the halacha is he's mivarach on the tnain, and he's paiter on the zayas, meaning that he made a hadama, and he doesn't have to make a bracha on the zayas at all. So now you're understanding why Rashi's talking about the whole time about bracha achas paiteres. But I don't understand. How is one bracha going to be pattering over here? Over here, what's the story with the zayas? It's a eight, and it's nine is the hadama. How's that working? So again, meis very lefanav to nine v'zayas v'archal tzon partis zayas. The Gemara is asking, how could you have a situation where you have a tznain and a zayas, which would be then berchasei not shavais, and you think you have an option to pick either one? No, we say clearly in this brisa that you make a bracha on the tznain and part of the zayas. So you see, you don't have optionality to choose. So what does the Gemara mean? What is Ula saying when Ula says b'shein berchasei and shavais is divrei hakom mevarach hazeh v'chazeh mevarach hazeh? So answers the Gemara, hachim ma'askin kishat tznain ikar. No. You have to understand that when we said b'she'en b'chaysein shavais, we're saying where there's no ikar and tafel. We're saying when they're both the same. So in that situation, if the brachos are not shavais, then everybody agrees you could choose whichever one you want. Even if one of them is from the men shiva, you can still choose whatever you want. But in this situation that we're having over here, the tznain is the ikar. The tznain, and as Rashi explains, why are you having the tznain? Rashi says shehit tznain ikar shebishviloi hischil ha'achila v'loi ochal zayas el lahafik chorfa shel tznain. The tznain is very spicy, right? It's giving a very powerful flavor, and in order to mitigate it, that's why you're having the olive. You're not having the olive for itself. So therefore, since the tznain is the ikar and the zayas is totally a tuffle to it, so the tznain's bracha is able to cover off on the zayas. It's two different brachas. So what did we already say before? We already said before, we had a whole back and forth on this. Remember, we said one of the son makes a hadama on ha'etz, right? What should really be ha'etz? And you made a hadama. What's halach? We said yaitz. We said it's different girsas with the Rambam. Maybe the Rambam passes like Rabbi Yehuda in one place, but how does he do that? And it sounds like maybe the Rambam, is being serious for himself. We talked about the different girsas, the Mari Korkis, etc. The Beis Yosef. Why? Because what does the Rambam say? In the one place he says that if somebody makes a hadam on it's his yaitza, but he also says that in the situation of bikurim, that he says that if somebody had a bikurim in a field that was no longer extant because the ma'ayan was destroyed or the tree was cut down, so the halacha was you were made and a kairek. right? So it didn't go with Rabbi Yehuda. So how did that work? Okay, we're not getting back into that now. But for our purposes here, we're asking the fundamental question, which is, um, if the Tznain is the Iker and the Zayas is the Tafel to it, then the reason that you will be able to make one bracha and be Yaitse on the other one, you wouldn't have to make another bracha on the Zayas, is because B'di'evet, as we say, a Hadama can work even for eight. So again, the Gemara's question is Meisvei, Lefanot Tznain, V'Zayas Mevarcha, Tznain, Peter says Zayas. Somebody has before them it's nine and the Zayas, and they make a bracha on its nine, and they're Peter the Zayas. So why are you saying Misha'ain B'Chayse and Shavais? You have an option to pick one or the other. You see, it's not true. You see that you pick the Tznain first. Says the Mar, no. Tznain Iker. The Tznain is the Iker, and the Zayas is a tuffle to it. It's just being brought in to mitigate the taste of the Tznain. And so therefore, since the Tznain is the Iker, and we know that a bracha of a bar per adam is able to be yaitz even for our eights in certain situations. This will be one of those situations, and that's the reason why you are only making one bracha. But in a normal situation where the brachas are not shavais, then you would make a bracha on either one that you want because neither one is being yaitz for the other one. That's at this stage of the Gemara right here. I should just point out that there's a very interesting Rashi over here that it's not really in the Gemara. Rashi says Pshita loigar sinan ad meisve. So Rashi takes out some language in the Gemara, and Rashi gives you two reasons here as to why he's taking this out. One is he says that it's not normative in the Gemara to say Pshita without first discussing what the issue is. And this is a very interesting point in terms of just knowing in Shas, that when we say Pshita, we don't just say Pshita without first explaining what we first have to say something. They would say, Pshita, that's Pasha. What are you explaining to me? You don't open up saying Pshita and then bring down what the question is. That's not the normal way to write in the Gemara. That's one reason why Rashi wants to take it out. And then secondly, substantively, he disagrees and says it's not Pasha. It's not Pasha to say that you can't have a situation where a Hadam is going to be Maitzei Ha'etz, because as we know, we already said, Baruch HaPeres Ilan, Baruch Pri'adama is Yatza. Fine. So at this stage of the Gemara, Ula has told us that Mebrechasei and Shavais, the halacha is machlaikas, according to Rabbi Yehuda and Shivas Adif, and according to Chav is Adif. B'she'ein Berchasei and Shavais, then we have Divrei Hakel, you can do whatever you want. You see a situation of a Tznain, where you're making a bracha on the Adama first and it's being pater you on the Zayas. Yes, that's because of the specifics over there, where the Tznain is the Iker and the Zayas is a tuffle to it. And we know that in situations like this, the Hadama can even work for Ha'etz. Good. Fair to Gemara. If that's how you're happy with and this conclusion sort of works for you, how do you understand the rest of the brisa? There is a second part. But if so, but Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with this conclusion. The Tanakama had said in this brisa that Snain v'Zayis is mevarach al Snain and Paiter is Zayis. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda says in mevarach al Zayis that you do make a bracha on the Zayis itself. Why? Sheha Zayis mimin shiva. That there is a kedimas here. Why? Because you wanted to say that according to Rabbi Yehuda, b'she'en b'chaysein and shavais, you can do whatever you want. It's not true. Rabbi Yehuda says there's even kedimus in a situation where the brachas are not shavais. You make a bracha on the zayas first because the zayas is from min shiva. So at this stage of the Gemara, we don't have an answer then, right? We don't have an answer because then it would sound like that the machlekes is b'she'en b'chaysein and shavais. There's a machlekes there too. And you can't say divrei hakel mevarach hazeh v'chayzeh mevarach hazeh. So the Gemara says, we have to put in the gears of the back. We had read the Gemara before. And hey, that whenever you have an ikr and a tafel, you make a brach on the ikr and you put to the tefela. Whenever you have two things before you, one of them is the ikr, one of them is a tafel. What do you make a brach on first? You first make a brach on the ikr and it's part of the tefela. So does Rabbi Yehuda not hold of this? In other words, if the situation is agreed upon, if we agree on the fact that the tznain is very bitter, and the reason that you're having the tznain and the zayas together is because you just want to mitigate the bitterness or whatever the sharpness of the tznain, and you're using the zayas to do so. So don't you say that one's the ikr, one's the tafel? And if so, doesn't Rabbi Yehuda then hold that the ikr would pass the tafel? So why would he be disagreeing? In fact, the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda is disagreeing. He's saying that you make a brach on the zayas first because the zayas are the min shiva, but how? How could he disagree? Doesn't he agree that the ikr and the tafel, the ikr is part of the tafel? Says the Gemara v'chitem ha'chanam de lesle. And if you want to say that, no, yeah, Rabbi Huda really doesn't believe in this. He doesn't really believe in the having the idea of the ikr being part of the tafel. But you can't say that because v'atanya Rabbi Huda Aimer machmas snoim ba'azayis. Over there we have another brayso. Rabbi Huda says that if the zayis is only coming because of the snoim, v'arachal snoim apartes zayis. So you see clearly he agrees that if you have an ikr and a tafel, you mavarach on the ikr and you're part of the tafel. So you're back to the situation where what? Where according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's very difficult to substantiate why Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you mavarach on the zayas because it's the min shiva. I understand it's the min shiva, but if it's only coming machmas that's nine, Rabbi Yehuda does hold of when you have an ikr and a tafel, you make a brach on the ikr and part of the tefillah. So then what is he talking about? Why are you making a brach on the zayas first? That's the question that we now have on Rabbi Yehuda to just explain this brayso. It's a localized question now. In other words, forget the idea of brachas in and shavais, where you could pick either one. Rabbi Yehuda could agree with that, but we just don't understand Pasha. This brayso, how does it work? How does this brayso make any sense? If Hanakama is clearly talking about a situation of a tznayin and a zayas, where the tznayin is the ikra and the zayas is the tafel, and Yehuda agrees when the tznayin is the ikra and the zayas is the tafel, you make a brach on the tznayin as part of the zayas. So then why is he saying over here that you have to do this as it's min shiva? It just doesn't make any sense. So at this stage of the Gemara tries another answer. This is the third time we're having this sort of an answer in brachas. It's also our last time in brachas that we're having this answer. And this is where the Gemara takes on essentially rewriting what it said in the brayso in order to make it work. Says the Gemara, okay, this is what we have to do. It's 9 acre. We're talking about a situation where it's 9 is acre. Okay. And the whole machlekes here isn't something else. Rabbi Yehuda agrees that ikr and tafel make a brach on the ikr, pater the tafel. Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the tznain would pater up the zayas. No question. That's not the issue here. It's a different machlekes. What's the different machlekes? Something was missing in the brayso, and now we'll explain. And how you fun of that tznain v'zayas, v'archal tznain u'partes hazayas. Somebody has before them what? The tznain the zayas. They make a bracha on the tznain and partes the zayas. Why? That's the situation where the tznain is the ikr, and because of the bitterness, the sharpness of the tznain, you need to have the zayas with it. So the zayas, the tafel, even if they have different brachas, nevertheless, the tznain is able to pater up. As we've already explained, you can make adam and pater up our eights. But what happens if the tznain is not ikr? What happens if the radish is not the ikr? You just happen to like radishes, and you happen to like olives, but it's not a specific bitterness or anything in the tznain. You're just eating it separately, both of them. You're in the mood. They both agree that on each the tznain and the zayis, when neither one is an ikr or a tafel, that you have the optionality to make a bracha on whatever you want. Even though what? Even though one of them is from the Shiva Saminim. Nevertheless, since they are different brachas, these brachas are considered to be equal. Again, at this stage, we're not going with the bahag. Therefore, you have the ability to make a bracha on whatever you prefer. And it's divrei hakol. That's what we said before. Right? Divrei hakol, b'she'im b'chaysein shavais, mevarach al zeh, v'chaysein mevarach al zeh, do whatever you want. So continues the Gemara. Ushnei minim ba'alma sheberchaysein shavais. But if you have a situation where you have two minim that the brachas are the same, mevarach al ezemen sheyirtza, right? That you're able to make a bracha according to the Tanakama on whichever one you want, right? That's what we said in the beginning of the Gemara. Sheberchaysein shavais. That's where the machlekes is. According to the Tanakama, according to the Chachamim, you could do min chaviv adif, so whatever you want. Ezemen sheyirtza means whatever is chaviv to you, that's you make a bracha on. And Yehuda disagrees. Yehuda disagrees, and he says that no, you make a bracha on the zayis because the Zayas is from the Min Shiva. So what does it come out now in this Gemara? It's essentially, the Suri Mechsam Gitani is essentially going to end up agreeing with what Ula is teaching us, right? That is to say, that when you have a situation where the Berchaisein are Shavais, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Shiva Saminim, if there is a Shiva Saminim, comes first. According to Chachamim, even if there's a Shiva Saminim, Chaviv comes first. And if it's a situation where it's not Berchaisein Shavais, you have a bar per adama or a bar per eitz. Again, as we said by shahakal, there is kedimus versus adama, shahakal versus eitz, there is kedimus. That we see right from the story of Bar Kapar, so that cannot be debated here. So if you have a situation where you don't have a shahakal, it's just either bar per adama, bar per eitz, so then everybody agrees you can choose whatever you want, even if one of them is from a min shiva, even if one of them is from the Zayin Minim. So at this stage of the Gemara, we are now sort of resolved with this understanding of what Ulu was trying to tell us and explaining our Mishnah. Good? Finish the Gemara. Huh? No, and the Bryce is telling us that if the Tznain is the Ikra and the Zayas is Tafala, and the whole reason of having the Zayas is only Machmas the Tznain, so then both Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan agree that the making a bracha on the Tznain, the part is the Zayas. But it's not a word there about brachas Ein and Shavais coming to be Maitzi one with the other, because obviously bracha Ein and Shavais, it doesn't work. The only reason why over here you're able to pater the bracha of the Zayas with the bracha of the Tznain, and even though the brachas are not Shavais, is because the Tznain is the Ikra and the Zayas is the Tafel to it. You're only eating the Zayas because of the Charfa of the Tznain. So because it's such a Charf type of vegetable, so you need something to mitigate it. So that's why you're having the Zayas. But the Zayas not being eaten for itself, so therefore it's Nichlal under the bracha of the Tznain, the Hadam of the Tznain, and that everybody agrees with, both Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Good? Okay, so is the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Pligi bar of Ami v'Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. The Gemara says what we just said, that seems so nice and clear, and tied it with a bow, is not so clear. Pligi bar of Ami v'Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. There's a machlekes between them. We don't know who says what, but that person says a machlekes. Chan Omar, machlekes b'shebrichaisei and shavais. One says that the machlekes is where the brachas are the same. The Rabbi Yehuda savar min shiva adif, v'Rabbanan savri min chaviv adif. That the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that if the brachas are the same, then of course min shiva comes first, and the Rabbanan say whatever chaviv comes first. And of course, if they're not min shiva there, then of course whatever chaviv everybody agrees with. As long as the brachas are shavais. Aval b'she'ein brachas shavais. But when the brachas are not the same, that you have a choice, you can make a bracha whatever you want. Again, not where one is an ikar or a tafel, just where you have optionality, you have the ability to choose the bar pri adam or bar pri eitz. Again, we're not talking about a shahakal. So again, according to, we don't know who's saying it, either of Amr or whichever one is saying it, this would be essentially the recondite, right? This is the recapitulation. The summary of what we just said. This is not disagreeing. It's exactly what we just said. This is the approach of Ula, the approach of the Chesur Mechsera. So either of Ami or Yitzchak Nafcha says again the same idea, that if the brachas are not shavais, even if one is a min from the shiva saminim, everybody agrees. You have an optionality. You have the ability to choose whatever you want. Again, provided that one is not the ikar tafel kind of situation. Okay. But v'chad amar, and one, either of Rav Ami or Yitzchak Nafcha disagrees and says no. That there's machlekes even if the situation is such that the brachas are not shavais. You thought that you have the ability to do whatever you want if the brachas are not shavais? No, you don't have the ability to do whatever you want. You even over there have kedimas. Says the Gemara Bishlam Madamish Bishlam Bechaysein Shavais machlekes. Shap, it makes sense according to the man the Amr who holds that when the brachas are the same, they have a machlekes between them, whether or not min chaviv is adif or shiva saminim is adif. I understand that, says the Gemara. Elaman the Amr b'she'ein b'chaysein shavais pligi. But according to the man the Amr who holds that where they're making an argument is not only where b'chaysein are shavais, that you have a question of adifas for min shiva or adifas for chavivas. But you want to say that there's a machlekes even when the brachos are not shavais. Says the Gemara, "B'may pligi." What are you arguing about in that situation? In other words, what's the argument about? If you have one bracha of ha'etz and one bracha of ha'adama, where's the debate able to come up? In what way would you have an ability to say that one should come before the other one? At this stage, we don't think that there is a specific, as we said from the Bahag, we don't think that there is a specific clarity or specified information that it's in that sense mivureres tfei. We don't think that. So why are you saying that there's a kedimas here? So that's the Gemara's question. According to whoever it is that says that the machlekes between Yehuda and Chacham is not only a berchai saying shavais, but even a berchai saying einon shavais. So the Gemara wants to know. I don't understand. In a situation where berchai saying are not shavais, please explain what the machlekes is about. What's the basis of this machlekes? Says the Gemara, Lamanda Amar b'she'ein berchai saying shavais pligi b'may pligi. On what are they arguing? Rabbi Yomi lahaktim. Well, they're arguing on kedimas. Kedimas in what sense? Again, we're not talking about here kedimas because of mivureres tfei. We're talking about kedimas in some other way. Rabbi Yomi says that there is nevertheless kedimas between a hadama and ha'etz, even if it's not dealing with mivureres tfei, even if we're not saying that the bracha of ha'etz is more specified information than a hadama. Nevertheless, there can still be kedimas. In what sense? The Amr Yosef item Rabbi Yitzchak kol amuktim b'pasuk zeh muktim lebracha. Whatever was kaidim in the pasuk, what the pasuk says is shiva saminim, right? The pasuk says eretz chilos erev v'gefon saying Rimiyin eretz zeh shemen udavash. So we have a memra from Rabbi Yosef and item Rabbi Yitzchak, whoever it was, who says that whatever is written first in the pasuk is first for the bracha, right? In other words, if you had in front of you an option to have a chita, right, versus a sa'ira, you have the chita first, right? If you have an option between a chita or a gefen, right, the chita comes first. Anything that's in the pasuk first has a kedimus, and therefore, as Rashi points out, so if something is in the pasuk versus not in the pasuk, then obviously it's not just within the pasuk that there's kedimus. But even if one thing is in the pasuk, one thing is out of the pasuk, of course the one from the pasuk has kedimus. So you were saying the whole time that she'ain berchai and shavais divrei hakol, that everybody agrees that you're able to make a bracha al zeh v'chayzim v'varach al zeh, whichever one you want, any adam, it doesn't make a difference, and everybody agrees to that. Says either Rav Ami or Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. No. There's not just the machlekes in a situation where berchai saying shavais that you say chaviv adif or zayim midim adif, but even where berchai saying are einon shavais, where you're not able to mitzi one with the other anyway. Even over there, you're going to say what? You're going to say that the shiva saminim is going to be adif. So whatever is going to be from the shiva saminim, if there's anything from the shiva saminim, either a hadam or ha'etz, versus the other one that is not from the shiva saminim, that will also come first. Okay, so at this stage of the Gemara, we now have two understandings of where the machlekes could be between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. But the Mishnah just said that Rabbi Yehuda said the Shiva Saminim, im yesh behem min Shiva Saminim, then Allah hu mavar. Chachamim said mavar chal is a shir, which we're saying is chaviv. But the Mishnah never specified if the Berchai saying were shavais or not shavais. So at this stage of the Gemara, how could you read the Mishnah? Either way, you can read the Mishnah as saying now that the machlekes between chavivas or shiva saminim applies if berchai saying are shavais, if you have two eitzes or two adamas in front of you, or you could read it according to Waman Amar that the machlekes is not like the way Ula said, right? You could read the machlekes in the Mishnah as even being in a situation where berchai saying are not shavais. So long as one is not an ikar or tafel, you can read the machlekes in the Mishnah as saying if you have a hadama and an eitz in front of you, one of them is from the shiva saminim. It's clear the shiva saminim goes first. Whether it's the Hadam or Eitz doesn't make a difference. But the Shiva Saminim comes first. So two ways of understanding what the machlekes is between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Again, Ula had his way, and either Rav Ami or Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka agrees with Ula, but the other one disagrees. That it's a bit of holding up, but it's clear, yes? Okay, so continues the Gemara, and now we get on a side topic, a very interesting side topic. So the Gemara says, "Kol hamukdam pasuk zeh mukdam lebracha." Whatever's in the pasuk first, that comes first for the bracha. Shnema, what does the pasuk say? Eretz chitos erev v'gefen useina b'rima and eretz shemen udvash. That's the whole pasuk there. Upliga the Rab Chanan, and this is the machlekes of the Rab Chanan. Why? The Amar Rabbi Chanan, because Rabbi Chanan said, "Kol hapasuk kulei l'shiyurin." That the reason that this pasuk is here is for shiyurin. Well, this pasuk is written here in order to give you the various shiurim. What do we mean? So we have a Mishnah in the Gemara that tells us, Chita, what is the shiur? V'chita, detnan, anechnas l'bayis hamnuga. Somebody's coming into a house that has tzaras, v'kelev al kaseifav, and he's carrying his shoes on his shoulders. Sandal v'tabayis b'yadav, and he's carrying his kalim on his shoulders, and he's carrying his shoes and his rings in his hands. So hu v'hein tamein. So he and the objects are all tamei. Miyad, right away. Hayalavush kelev sandalav biraglav. But if he was wearing his shoes, and his wearing his clothing, and v'tabaisav be'etzbaisav, and he's wearing his rings on his fingers. This reminds you of what? Not this week's parsha, but a couple weeks parsha. The pasuk is going to tell us that Aaron tells the Jewish people, Parku nizme azav asher ba'oznei neshechem v'neseichem v'aviu elai. And what does the pasuk actually say? They didn't do that. They didn't wait. Or the wife said no. What did they do? They took their own rings. They took their own earrings to make the ego. So you see, even in the times already of the Mishnah, they were still the men who were still wearing what? Jewelry, right? You are wearing your rings, and what happens in that situation? Who tamei miyad? He becomes tamei immediately. In other words, if you're doing everything with the way it would normally to be expected, that is, you're wearing your shoes, your rings are on your fingers, your kalim are your clothing you're wearing. All that situation is normative, so you become tamei immediately. But all your kalim, your rings, all that, your shoes, they remain tar. Until you wait a certain amount of time to eat. The amount that you'll be eating would be amount of bread. The amount of bread that you would eat is the pas of a chita, not so'erim. Chita is easier to eat, as Rashi explains. V'loy pas yarin, which is I guess a harder bread to be able to take down. Mesav ha'ochel beliftin, and you're eating it in a haseba position, and you're eating it with a certain lift and a certain relish, which will help you make it eat faster. So if you stay in the house for that period of time that would take you to eat this loaf, then the halach is, as Rashi says, achilas pras is chatzi kikar, right? That's a half of a loaf. Shishir b'chacham se'erev. That amount of time, if you were able to eat the bread, and you left the house before the amount of time that you would take to eat that bread, then you would not be tamei. You would be tamei, but your objects, your kalim, your sandalim, your tabaisav, that's not going to be tamei. So what do you see from this? You see that the Torah used the word chita, says Reb Chanan, to teach you shiurim. The shiur has to do with a chita. So I wrote the Tanan etzem kisayim b'tam magmas. Okay, we have to move. Right, when it comes to the sa'ira, because we have a halacha that an etzem kisayira, a bone that's the size of a sa'ira, is metav magmas. Right, that becomes tamu magmas. Meaning tam oil, but tam in oil. Right, you remember what this was an answer? We used this answer back on that payment base. Remember the more over there? It says Rabbi Yochanan said, "Didn't garment that sir beer." Right, he was walking around with the bone of his 10th son. The question was, how could it be? So the Aruch said the answer was why, because he was carrying around his tooth. But we had another answer. Another answer could be that he was carrying a bone that was smaller than the size of an etzem kisayira, and therefore would not be matama b'maga b'masos. They have to have at least maga b'masos in order to be tamei. Gefen k'dei revias yayin. The next word of the pasuk is about the grapes. Where do you have that shear? Is it k'dei revias yayin l'nazir? So there you use again the shear of a gefen for that. Te'ena kigagaris loitzer Shabbos. There's a halacha when it comes to Shabbos that, as Rashi explains, that a person is maisi oichlin kigagaris. Right, a person is bringing out a certain size like a te'ena, so then he's going to be chayav when it's on Shabbos. Remind, where do you have a situation where you have a remind that's used as a shear? Because kol klei balabatim, all the objects of balabatim, turn the page to Mamalach and Beis, is shiur and kiribanim. The shiur is like a reminder. As Rashi explains, there's a difference between the balabatim and the chenvenis. The balabatim are going to be in a sense, more makbid than the chanmin. The uman, the person who's selling the dishes, is not going to be the same. So you have an earthenware dish; it loses its status of tameh if you make a hole in it the size of a remind. So you see, you're using remind. Eretz zay shemen. What does it mean? Zay shemen. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, Eretz shekol shireh kazesim. Rabbi Yossi says it's a land where all the shiurim that we use are like the shiurim of zaysim. Says the Mar, what? Kol shiur ksagadat. All the shiurim that we use are for zaysim. Not true. And we just showed you that we have a shiur fechita and saira and geffen and te'ena. So how could you say that the land where all the shiurim are like zaysim? Ela eretz sharov shiurak zaysim. Say that Rav of the shiurim are like zaysim. Rashi here is not as expansive as the Rashi in Sukkah. If you look at Rashi in Sukkah Vav, Rashi over there says about mace, nevela, isser, chelev, dam, pigul, noiser, tamei, get a nasha. All these things are all dependent on the share of Azayas. So since all these things are dependent on the share of Azayas, so you see, Rov of the shiurim in the Torah are having to do with the Kazayas. Dvash, what's the share of a dvash? What is a dvash? A dvash, as we know, whenever the Torah says Eretz cholav dvash, dvash is not the honey of a bee. It means the honey from a date. And so, where do you use dates as a shear on Yom Kippur? The Mishnah in Yuma, the last parak, Yom Kippur. That's when you have cars for eating. So you see, Rav Chanan says that this pasuk of using all the different terms, Eretz Chita, Geffen, Eretz Hashem, Dvash, you see that it's fundamental to what shiurim. It's not a word that you want to say it's fundamental. That's muktim in the pasuk, whatever comes first. No, according to Rav Chanan, it didn't teach you all the shiurim, and this is, of course. Right, remember the tshuva we did from the Tzitz Eliezer. The Tzitz Eliezer we discussed what it means at Zayis nowadays. Like Zayis nowadays, it's Tzlach, Psalm Kufta Zayin. How could it be? There's a much bigger Zayis. We had Machlekes, Rashi, and Taisvis versus the Rambam. Is it a Chati Zayis? Is it a Chati Be'ah Kazayis, or is it a Shlish of a Be'ah? Fine. But what we see here is that a Kazayis is Rev Shiurim in the Torah, and we're learning that how. What are the Tzitz Eliezer brought down from the Geshitas Hagainim? What was the reason that the Torah talked about Azayas? Talked about Azayas because it's in the pasuk. These were common things. People were farmers. They saw all of these things, so that's how they knew what the shiurim were. You want to know what the shiur is that the Mishnah is telling you when it says Achita? Well, so you go outside, you can take a look. You want to say, you know what these are. You see these. So the Gemara now says, so what about the Idach? What about the other man, the Amar? We had a machlekes here. It's between Rav Yosef and Rav Hanan. Rav Yosef is saying that the reason that all these are listed in the pasuk is for Kedimus. So what does he do with this? So he says, what? What do you mean? You think that this is a riot that the shiurim are written clearly in the pasuk? No. The cross machna ba'alma. Just the rabbanon the shiurim, and the cross just an asmachna ba'alma. So the Gemara says, let's just finish the Gemara. We'll come back in a second. Rav Chizr and Rav Nuna have Yasib Sudasa. Rav Chizr and Rav Nuna are sitting at a meal. I saw the Kami time for money. They brought in front of Rav Chizr and Rav Nuna dates and reminds. So what did he eat? Shak Rav Nuna Baruch HaTam Rebreishu. Rav Nuna made a bracha on the tamarim. So what are you going to ask? Why are you making a bracha first on the dates before the remind? The remind is earlier in the pasuk. So he says the unbelievable answer. Go look at the pasuk again. In the pasuk it says Eretz twice. It says Eretz Chidus Erev from the saying of remind. Eretz Zeh Shemen Devash. So the second Eretz comes along and restarts the count. So if you have something that's a Tamar versus a remind, well, the Tamar is number 2 in the count from Eretz, and the remind is number 5. So therefore we go first with the Tamar over the remind. Whoever should give you like an iron chair, right? We should be able to listen to your incredible verklach that you have to say. So number one, we have the Gemara in Sukkah Vav that has a different version of this. The Gemara over there, when they ask the question, the Gemara doesn't answer Elam Midrabanan. The Gemara answers V'hilchasa. Right? The Gemara says Elam Midrabanan. The Gemara says V'hilchasa Ukras Machta Ba'alma. It's a halacha, which sounds like it's halacha l'mashmi Sinai, like the Gemara says in Yuma Daf Pei. The Rabbi Yochanan says that shiurim are halacha l'mashmi Sinai. So is it halacha l'mashmi Sinai or is it a d'Rabbanan? Which one is it? It makes a big difference if it's d'Oraisa d'Rabbanan. All that's a massive topic and not for the moment. Look at Taisus there in Sukkah Vav that goes through this discussion. But what is clear is this, and this is the one question that we're going to have to deal with on a Sunday class, which is halacha l'mashmi Sinai, is that going to be something that has no machlekes in it? What do we say according to the Rambam in the Akdamah to the Bereshit Mishnah? He said Allah it never has a machlekes. But you see, that's not a machlekes thing. More Tzugavav telling it's a hilchasa. Here it's telling us Rabbanon. Is it Allah or is it not? This we have to go through the tshuva of Chavos Yor and Kuf Tzadi Beis, where he goes through all of this. Last point to just mention is that Tosfos points out the top Tosfos of Isa the Kamer Ta'amir Very Money. Tosfos says you have to make sure you understand that this is not there for the bread of the Suda. They were the Gemara told us that they were sitting in Suda. It means they must have had bread. So Veloy Lavas Behan is the Pas. It did not come into Suda. We're gonna have to see that on Sunday, Monday, whatever, to go through this sugi about what Devarim Habon Mitoch Suda. So this didn't come into Suda. That's why they were making a bracha on it, and that's why the discussion of which bracha to make on first. Have a wonderful day.